Hey, tonight we're joined by Tom Terry. Tom, thank you so much for joining us. You are a veteran when it comes to tracking hurricanes, as you have worked for WFTV now for 18 years, which is our sister
hmm
station. And you told me that you've actually been tracking hurricanes in Central Florida since 1996.
That's right. A lot of storms. I can't keep track of them anymore, but I'm getting old. Let me tell you, McCall, a year like this will put some gray hairs on you.
Yeah, I imagine. I mean, you could be young and spry and growing those grays with a year like this because it's been historical. I mean,
hmm
it feels like storm after storm after storm. Let's just first start talking about Zeta. That's our current storm. And what's going on with it right now?
Yeah, closing in on Cancun, Cozumel, and Tulum. If you ever been there on vacation, I went there on my honeymoon 25 years ago, almost 26 years ago now, and they're about ready to get hit with a Category 1 hurricane. One thing about this storm, though, is that this will be the third time they've been hit here this month.
Oh my.
Fortunately, this will not be a major hurricane, though, McCall.
Yeah, so we've seen a lot of storms moving into the Gulf waters, and time again, it gets re-energized. There's just an environment there that is allowing these storms to not only maintain strength, but oftentimes intensify. And then smacking the Gulf Coast, in particular, this year is a record-breaking year for the amount of storms that have formed in the Gulf, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, well, this will actually be the 11th storm to impact the U.S. mainland. 11, and that's an ongoing record. 1906, we had 9. Then we
Wow.
broke it earlier this year with 10. Now this will become the 11th. And we do think that some of the cooler waters, we've had so many storms, McCall, up here across the northern Gulf Coast that hurricanes like to distribute heat. They're big heat engines, if you will. And it literally has taken some of the heat out of the Gulf and has expelled it in the form of wind and rain across the deep south. But waters are not as cool or not as warm here, rather. So I do think this storm will weaken slightly before landfall, but still expected to make landfall as a hurricane. And one, I mentioned there were 11 storms that made U.S. landfall with Zeta included. This will be the 7th one they've had to deal with in that general area.
That's unbelievable. And
Mm.
going back in history, from written history, documented history, this is the only second time in history that we've reached the name Zeta. The last
hmm
time was in 2005, and people remember that primarily because of Katrina and Rita, which also had major impacts there in the
Oh,
Gulf.
huge.
But this is
hmm
the earliest we've reached the name Zeta. So we're breaking records there, but there's the possibility that we're going to even make a new record, right?
We had to expand this graphic, McCall, because we stopped it over here with Gamma, but then we had to keep adding names. So I'm going to need a bigger map here. But we're all the way down through Zeta. So Eta, Theta, and Iota are the next 3 storm names. And I do think we could have at least Eta develop in the next 10 days or so in the Caribbean, hopefully steering away from many land masses. But we are way above. When NOAA updated their forecast, between 19 and 25 named storms, we have already exceeded NOAA's forecast with 27 named storms so far. One thing we haven't seen a lot of, though, and I should knock on wood, are the fact we've only had 4 major hurricanes. And so we're still not exactly sure why we've had a little bit of a, if you can call it a lull in major hurricanes. We really thought we'd see a lot more majors than we have this year.
So yeah, that's some fortunate news. While we've had a ton of storms, we haven't seen those big blockbuster type of storms. It
Mm-hmm.
also feels like the Gulf has been getting a lot of action this year. What has
A lot of
been
action.
in play keeping a lot of the storms in the Gulf rather than tracking those storms through the Caribbean and up into Florida?
Yeah, I'll back my maps up here a little bit. We've had a persistent ridge of high pressure across the open Atlantic waters, and that has really kept a lot of these storms coming all the way across into the Caribbean instead of turning early toward Florida. I say knock wood because we haven't had a big storm in Orlando this year, but we've had them propelled around the high, and they have just been on that same track near the Yucatan between Texas and the western part of Florida. So this was just a year where it all lined up, unfortunately, for the Gulf Coast to get a number of storms, 7 storms this season, including Zeta.
Well, going back to just the beginning of our conversation, you have a lot of years of experience in this. Is there anything that sticks out to you as to why this might have been such a special year as to the development of these storms?
Well, the waters have been unusually warm. We started this cycle back in 1995. For the last, 25 years or so, we've been warmer than average in the Atlantic, and it was warmer even than normal this year. Plus, the pressures have been quite low, so the hurricanes and tropical storms have kind of had a little bit of a kickstart to get going. But this was just one of those years where everything came together, and unfortunately, that big high pressure area kept a lot of things, instead of turning offshore, they've been turning right there into the Gulf and coming toward Florida. I can't believe that of all these storms, 27 so far, Central Florida has not taken a direct hit with one of these. I knock on wood here because it's still not quite the end of the season, McCall.
Right. The season officially ends November 1st, right? Or is it the end of November?
End of November, but we've actually had storms back in 2005. We had Zeta form much later. It actually formed in late December. So let's hope we don't keep going all the way through late December. I hope I don't need a bigger map of names.
I agree. 2020 has been a year, and we don't need any more. And as you said, just let's be thankful that we didn't have many more major hurricanes and those major hurricanes making landfall. Tom, thanks for joining me. This has been a lot of information, and I appreciate it. I know our viewers here at Ohio appreciate it. We don't live along the coast, so we don't have, to deal with those kind of storms. But every once in a while, they make their way up here, as I know Zeta is going to bring us a ton of rain later this week. If anybody wants to follow you, where should they follow you on social media?
Tom Terry, WFTV. Just search, I think actually it's T Terry. WFTV. I got two first names, Tom and Terry. But I'll let you know, McCall, if you guys need to warm up, come down here. It's going to be 89 degrees tomorrow, but don't tell anybody.
I'll be there, as it's going to be in the 50s for us here tomorrow.
Come on down.
All right. Thanks, Tom.